Welcome back to Industry Talks. My name is Michael Bates, the host. I am sitting here today with Jason Dennis, who is just a fantastic guy. Being young and in the industry, you want to find somebody to try to idolize or mold your career like, and Jason is one of those guys for me. He always answers my calls for any questions. So just an outstanding human. So I'm excited to have him on. We're just going to, I guess, let you kind of just give your background of how you became into the material handling world. I kind of know where you came from, but I guess as far back as you want to go.
Well, thank you for that amazing introduction. I will say that. I think you dropped the mic on that one.
Yeah.
But a little bit about myself. I've been in, I would say, material handling and construction sales now going on a little over a dozen years. Mm-hmm. I started in the construction, really liked it because it was hands-on, got to run the big boy toys, got to meet a lot of people outside. And then it brought me into the material handling world by chance. I like the opportunity that I've had. But again, just like the construction sales, it's a lot of hands-on, it's interacting with customers,
it's
locations.
Fun. Yeah.
It is. It allows you to get creative and really look outside the box.
You're not stagnant.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You can make it, if people find this stagnant, they're not doing something right as far as I'm
100%.
concerned. Yeah. So I've been in it a little while now, and I really enjoy doing it.
So I know you said that when you started, you were in the construction world. It's funny. I almost feel like every person I talk to that's successful in the material handling world, their like story is similar. It's like chance. Like, oh, I didn't really think I got. It's not like anybody is like, I'm going to college. Like, yeah, I'm going to college to be a material handling salesperson. It's always like, you know what I mean? I feel like everybody's got these stories like, well, I did this and then I met this person and I got into it this way. Like I did it. I was through a recruiting service. I was like, I want to be in sales. Like, well, we have this person that does equipment. And that's all I knew. And I interviewed with our VP and my old boss, and that was 2017, and here we are. So it's cool, like hearing all the different types of ways people get into this world, because it's kind of a secret. I feel like it's like
I think it's an unknown. It really is. When I was in construction sales, of course, I had friends and coworkers who were doing the material handling. And I really didn't know until I got into it how wide open it is. It's not just I'm gonna say something that lifts something and moves something. It's so much more than that. And I guess that's what, when I got into it, was the draw to really keep me in it, because it's just amazing. People don't understand unless you're in it or you talk to somebody who's in it how much is really involved in material handling. It's amazing.
It's like, building a lift. You wouldn't realize that there's 7 different types of lights. It's just like speccing these units is so it can customized to each customer's application, like to a point that's more intense than I ever really knew. But then want to say this too. So you kind of came in. So today's episode, I'll let them know, is different types of purchasing strategies. So for a customer, if a customer is listening to this and they have multiple locations, you were kind of the perfect person to speak on this, because you've done both of these types of jobs, I can say, on a territory level, which is more geographically condensed, to more of now you're what we call a major or key accounts, whatever the title, I don't even know, but on a multiple location national kind of scale. So we just kind of want to dig into, in your experience, purchasing locally versus purchasing centralized purchasing from a corporate office, say. Is there a right? Is there a wrong? Can you name pros and cons just off the top of your head?
I can, and really, as far as right and wrong, there really isn't.
Yeah.
It really depends on a multitude of things. I have found that there are pros and cons to each one, but again, it all depends on how the company is based. Are they publicly traded? Are they a privately owned company? Are they spread out all over the country? Are they southeast primarily, northeast?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things. I would say that I've learned a hybrid method wouldn't even be a bad idea either, where you have a centralized purchaser, but then you can also work with the local, I would say, facility managers.
Contacts,
I would say, contacts, because again, like we just touched on with material handling, things are very specific.
Yes.
And they're very application specific.
Yes.
So you may have one customer who is, let's just say they're centralized in purchasing, but yet they have 75 locations throughout the U.S.
Yes.
Now, each location may not do the same thing.
That's a good point.
So if they don't do the same thing, then they're not all going to have the same reach trucks.
Exactly.
And that's where I wouldn't say it's a con about having centralized purchasing, but you really need to reach out to each facility.
It could get complicated
very, very quickly.
Yes.
It could get complicated because you can't buy one 5,000-pound electric and put it in every one of their facilities. It's just not going to work that way.
Yeah, because they could have different racking layouts. They could have different, aisle widths. They could have different capacities, products. So then you got one that they can't lift. You got OSHA violations. So you could have all sorts of problems.
Exactly.
So, and then I guess a pro of centralized purchasing, if each location did the same thing, it takes one less thing off of this. I guess that would be a pro, correct?
It's a pro. I think one of the big pros of centralized purchasing, especially when it comes from a sales rep or an account manager, I should say, is you're dealing with one person when it comes to the purchasing.
Correct.
Now you're quoting to that person. You are, you're talking about specifics, talking about financing options, all the things that are involved in that purchase.
Yeah.
So you don't have multiple contacts in one company.
Correct.
It's so much easier and then you can develop a relationship with that person as well.
Correct.
And I don't want to say mold them, but I've tried to, with centralized purchasers, have them understand about the hybrid, about, hey, we want to do it right for you the first time. We don't want to make any mistakes. So can you help me branch out to your people? Or, hey, when I send you a quote, I would really like you to forward it onto your facility manager to confirm specifications and things like that.
Yeah, because that's a good way to do it. Like me and you are going to deal, on the financial side of things, but I'm going to send you pricing. But I'd also like to get input from localized people to get their feedback because they're the ones using this stuff.
Correct. And they might pick up something that,
hey, we need this and not, XYZ.
Yeah.
I have a customer who it's my really first one that's centralized, I guess, purchasing. And I have what I guess you can call her like sourcing. So she talks to me just about 30,000 feet looking down sourcing. And then I have a contact at each location that will tell me what they need, and then I will then go communicate it with the sourcing person. Like, hey, this person needs XYZ lift with these specifications, and then she'll say, okay, we're going to lease this one, or we're going to do this. So it's kind of like you said. I guess that's a hybrid.
That's a perfect case of it.
Yeah,
right
I didn't
there.
even really realize that was a hybrid. And there's a couple other customers I'm talking to. So I guess this is. Is there like a criteria that you start being a territory guy before you're in this position?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a type of customer that you're kind of like, hey, we need to start talking maybe about changing up purchasing strategies? Is there like 4 locations is when you start talking about it? Is there really a criteria?
Well, actually, being the local guy, I ran into companies in my territories that were actually doing centralized purchasing. So the facilities I was trying to get in with really, they had no say.
Yeah.
So that's where I would actually try and change that.
Yeah.
Break the mold a little bit, get in with the local guy, see what I could do to help, then reach out with the centralized purchaser.
Yes.
Whoever that is, and sort of say, hey, listen, I was speaking with them. Again, it goes back to the hybrid theory.
Yeah.
If you can't have the communication in the locations that you're trying to fulfill an expectation, it's going to be very difficult to get it right every time.
Mm-hmm. So do you think hybrid's more prominent? I guess that is more prominent because how many times have you seen in locations that all do the exact same thing?
Very rarely.
I feel like hybrid's probably more common than just we use this truck across the board,
Correct.
Order this truck every time we need a truck.
And it's funny because if you talk about centralized versus localized purchasing, it's really, centralized in a nutshell means one person buys for the entire company, regardless of location.
Yeah.
Okay. Local means, each individual location buys their own stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
So to say that, how do I want to word that? It's kind of strange because when you talk about each one, that you can have centralized purchasing but still work locally. So there's the hybrid effect.
Yeah.
So is it a pro and a con? Are there pros and cons to each one? There are, but it depends on how the company uses that.
Yeah.
It's I guess the old school way of doing it is when companies were doing the same thing. It was much easier to just consider it a centralized purchase.
Yeah, because everything's getting the same thing.
Because everybody right now that's centralized, they're still reaching out to their local facilities most of the time. Now, are the local facilities working with sales reps? Sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not. You know, it's kind of a.
So it's not really
so broad. It's so open.
That's what it's hard to even say. There's a criteria because.
That's correct.
You could have a customer that has 5 locations that's in we'll even call it hybrid. Well, that's the same thing in this for the sake of conversation. Centralized purchasing hybrid. Someone that has 5 locations might be a better candidate than someone that has 10, judging on the situation.
Right.
There's not like once you hit 3 locations, you should do this.
Right. There is no set criteria.
Yeah. In your experience, I guess, having a customer that has multiple locations, is there a benefit cost-wise?
Centralized purchasing, typically there is. Because when you're dealing, for instance, if I have a customer who has 50 locations, okay, and they're asking for quotes for all 50 locations, their pricing matrix is going to be the same for all 50 of them. Now, if they go localized, depending upon where they are in the country,
different markets,
depending upon the dealer, depending on the markets, it really just the incentives that are out there in different programs.
Yeah,
it may not be as beneficial for localized when it comes to that. You might not get those fixed costs.
Yeah, so generally speaking, because you get better pricing. I understand what you mean.
So if you're buying from one company, you're going to obviously get better discounting, better pricing. If you got a fleet of 300, if you're buying 300 through one company, and instead of buying 6 through 50 companies, obviously you're going to get more incentives.
Exactly.
And better consistency, I guess, is the way to do it.
Yeah.
That our way to say it is centralized purchasing. You get much more consistency. For larger companies, smaller companies, if they do centralized,
sometimes it might not make sense.
Correct.
Yeah, because that's, I guess what you said, I guess in my head I was thinking, once these big companies, and you made a good point, being a territory guy. I mean, I if I got $1 for every time I walked in somewhere and they're like, oh, we don't do any purchasing locally, it's all corporate, I'd be a millionaire. I feel like, and that's, for being a local guy, I mean, there's massive companies all over the place, and you deal with them now, but, and that's what they do. They're purchasing it locally, or centralized from who knows where in the country where the corporate office is, and they, ship it all over the country. And then you're trying to break the mold of that on the opposite end. It's funny when you're a territory guy, you want to do the opposite when you're...
It is, and one little trick that I used to do when I'd go in as a territory guy, once I started hearing word of this centralized purchasing that people were doing, is I learned from a couple of other people, some of them can buy local, but they can only spend a certain amount of money. So then my next trick was going in, and not trick, but I guess idea to build a relationship was going in and saying, hey, so I understand, what's your limit for local purchasing?
Yeah.
Is it a pallet jack? Is it
XYZ?
XYZ.
Even
so
if it's,
you try and fill that, you try and fill that little bit of void that they have, and then who knows, maybe
it turns into something different.
Go from there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's what I've started to do, because Southeast, we offer a lot more than forklifts.
Yes.
And from racking to, AGVs to, you name it. And I think you've had we could do floor repairs. We can do a lot of different stuff.
Yep.
And one thing that I've tried to get better at is if I know a customer cannot buy a forklift from me, being a material handling provider versus a forklift provider. So saying, well, how's your, you have damaged racks, I can help you with that, or you have the XYZ. So there's, I guess, expanding their knowledge of what we do. That's something that I'm really trying to get better at, is letting people, because a lot of people think of us first as a forklift company.
Correct.
So you have to educate everybody else on what actually Southeast is, which is not just a forklift company, because we do a lot more. We sell golf carts. It's crazy. We can sit here all day and just talk about different things that we've sold.
You got to be a value to your customer.
Yeah.
You got to be, today in this day and age, I think it's so much easier if they can rely on one individual for 90% of their needs. It's going to make their life a lot easier.
A lot easier.
So.
I had a customer tell me they wanted I'm not going to get into crazy specifics, but they wanted a certain machine that was lithium, and there's one person in the country that does it. And I told him straight up, I said, there's one person that does this, and they normally sell direct. I can go through them, and they're like, we don't care if there's even a little bit of a premium. Mm-hmm. It's easier for us just to have to, I don't want to have to set them up as a customer and do all this stuff. Yep. I would pay you more money just to have one person deal with all this, and that's what we did. So that's just an honesty thing too.
Yeah.
Just being honest with them. Hey, I can get you this, but it's gonna be a little bit more if you go direct. And they were like, that will offset itself by the work that I would have to do to set everybody else up. So like you said, just being a value. Let's see. You said there was cost. I got these questions here. Oh yeah, this is a good one. I kind of already know the answer to this just based off what we said, but is there a certain industry you see this more in, or not really? On a customer side?
Not really.
That's a hard question.
It's a very hard question, and I'm trying to analyze the clientele that I'm either currently dealing with or that have dealt with.
I'm even thinking if I even know of but I don't even know if there's like a specific.
Well, I will say in certain industries,
like food and beverage, maybe.
The beverage industry is one where I think you've got. I would have to say, based on my dealings, is where there's the most consistency between locations.
True.
Okay, so bottles only get so big. There's only so many of them, especially when you're dealing with a certain manufacturer or bottler. Mm-hmm. So then you've got some uniformity in how they do things. So I guess then you would have a better opportunity for a standardized fleet, I guess, as far as forklifts are concerned.
That's true.
But even then,
there's still many
glitches there that have got to,
That's crazy.
Whether it's how big, location having to go outside, because they just can't store everything. They've got it in, out exterior buildings that they need to get to, that you're going to have to change your type of lift. But I mean, that would, if you wanted to answer the question, the one that I would see the most consistency in, it would be the food and beverage. Yeah.
Do you have a preference as an account manager, or do you not really? Does it not make a difference to you? Because now you deal with a completely, I wouldn't say different, but different clientele than I deal with.
It's a little bit different.
Do you find that easier or harder? I'm sure your day to day now versus when you were doing what I was doing is probably very different.
Yes.
Is there a preference, or is it not?
I kind of, again, I go back to the hybrid. I really like the centralized purchasing due to having one contact. Now, when you're talking about a company I have one who has 65, 70 locations, it's very difficult at that point in time to keep up with everybody.
That's what I was going to say, because if you had 70 people calling you.
Or I had to call 70 people to check in on them. That's where I think the centralized purchasing, as far as I am concerned, as a representative or a consultant for them, makes my life a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Because, typically if they're centralized purchasing, the local facilities are required to go through the purchaser for any type of acquisition.
And then they go through you.
So then they go through me.
So that just helps streamline things.
It does.
Because if you had 70 people calling you about, I don't know, we ordered 42-inch forks, we need 48. Or just random little small things, that would be you would have no time.
Have no time at all. And then again, when they do fleet replacements, sometimes they do them all at the same time. So now when you're coming down to, replacement time, it's utter chaos.
You would be drowning for like a long time.
Right.
Dealing with all the stuff.
So that does help, as a consultant, to have that centralized purchaser as the main point of contact. But then again, as I develop the relationships with the customers, I get local contacts, and I still reach out to them.
Just to
when I find out that Albuquerque's needing,
something.
6 lifts. The first thing I do is I talk to the purchaser, then I contact the local one or go visit them and see what they're looking for.
And then
go back to the purchaser.
Yeah, I guess centralized, when you just look at the shell of it, seems like, oh, it's easy. One guy buys all the lifts for everything, and that's what it is. But I guess if you peel back the curtain, it's not. It's not that.
It's not. Now, it makes it, for a company, again, it makes it a lot easier to track things, all the purchases,
side.
The billing side.
I think that's probably something we haven't talked about. That's probably one of the main
right. And people have
pros.
Things have to be accounted for, especially when you talk about publicly traded companies.
Yes.
You can't have each location just going rogue and purchasing all these things, and all of a sudden, they get the P&L, and they're like, when did we buy all these lifts, and why did we buy them? So, I think accountability is a big thing with the centralized purchasing, especially for larger companies.
And I would think, like you said, like the billing side too, on your accounting team's going to love you.
Oh, yes.
Because they're just going to have to bill one company for everything. I mean, that's all they have to have. And then the way we do it, we'll have one contact in here that will be your person. So if you have a billing question, you contact X.
Yes.
If that's how that works. And so I think that's another pro that I guess I didn't even think about. So right now is having on the back side of the sale, centralized. I think that would probably be one of the bigger pros, actually.
And I think that's why more companies go to the centralized purchasing, the larger companies.
Yes.
Is because it able to keep the book straight a lot easier.
Yes.
It just keeps people in line. It keeps accountability there.
Easier to track.
Much easier to track. And
especially on your end, they can say, hey, Jason, in 2019, we, Albuquerque can you look at what?
Exactly.
Or this has X amount of hours on it. Do you think this location's ready to, and you can kind of help consult better knowing their fleet. So once you're doing it you'll know their fleet pretty well.
Yes.
You've put the equipment in there. You've taken the equipment out. You kind of know this location runs it way harder than this location. You can maybe even start talking about, we'll get new equipment here and move this one over here.
Right. Yep.
Kind of becoming more of I feel like when you get to that, you're way more integrated into their business.
Yes. Absolutely.
You're more valuable to them.
Well, of course, because then I mean, not for nothing, a purchaser most of the times does not leave their location.
Yeah.
So they're while they may be in contact with the local facilities or the local facility managers, that's in my opinion, that's my job as their material handling consultant, is to be in the know about those locations.
Exactly. And help them realize.
That's right. So I'm heading off problems at the pass.
Yes.
So I think that's very important when it comes to dealing with larger companies, especially if they're doing centralized purchasing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, they're just not in the know, as much as they should be because they're doing other things.
Yeah.
Because they're not just buying forklifts, they're buying everything else for the company too. So, that also,
they can't be experts on everything they're purchasing. I mean,
right.
the one I have is, that person that I was talking about, the source, she does anything from trash can, like waste management, to forklifts, to paper supplies.
Yep.
I mean, all sorts of stuff. So I guess the way I looked at it was like, don't worry about the lifts.
Right.
I'll handle the lifts.
And that's right. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And
I got you on the lifts. I can keep up with the hours. I can keep up with, the condition and do all that stuff. You don't have to worry about that. If things get hairy, we'll talk. If they need more stuff, we'll talk. Other than that, I can kind of keep my finger, on the pulse and let it kind of do its thing.
Yeah, and keep an eye on it. And while we were talking about that, I was thinking about a con of centralized purchasing, and I would say this doesn't happen all the time, but one of the cons that I've found with it is there's a lot of red tape involved with getting approvals. So when it comes to centralized, again, you're probably talking publicly traded companies. It's got to go up 3 or 4 ladders, down a slide, around the corner, and then finally get signed off on.
Yeah.
So that causes delays.
Yes.
So there are a lot of delays that you find in that type of purchasing just to get the approvals because everybody else is busy.
Yes. Versus local,
it's
probably
if
like
he
one
gets
guy.
what he wants, he signs it and it's
done.
ordered.
Yeah.
So there is some red tape, but again, depending upon how long you've been dealing with your company and how good of a relationship you have with them as a consultant, you might be able to get that time frame narrowed down. It's not going to happen overnight, mind you, but again, that is definitely one of the cons of centralized purchasing for most companies. Not a lot, not all of them, but
and that's what I guess from talking with you. I don't know how long I've been doing this, but there's not a playbook. There's not something that says. That's what I guess in my brain, the reason we were talking about this, I think, is to open this conversation up is, is there one or is there not one? And we've come to realize that it's so specialized. And that's about this whole industry. I've learned that everything is so niched. Mm-hmm. Like we deal with so many different types of companies that do so many different types of things. Like I got a glass manufacturer to a beverage. I mean, it's like something that don't even work in the same realm of the world, but they use us for this type of stuff. So you have to be able to, not chameleon, that kind of makes it sound like, but I guess be an expert in everybody's own world.
Well, you got to be open-minded.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. You can't go in you can't go in with blinders on.
Yeah.
You have to be wide open to new ideas. You have to be wide open to looking outside the box. I mean, you have to be and I say the word consultant because it's funny. I hate the word sales.
Yeah, me too.
It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I tell people when I meet them for the first time, I'm like, I'm a consultant. I don't like sales reps.
I don't like sales reps either.
But as a consultant, I think you become more of an asset to your client or your customer when you can help them think outside that box. Whether you find something that will help them or they're looking for something that you might be able to jump on and find.
Yeah.
So, but with the material handling business, you are 100% spot on. It's never the same.
Never.
It changes daily in some cases.
That's also, I think, why it's so fun.
Yes.
Because it's never
boring.
Like, what's that movie with Tom Hanks? Is that a movie that every day he wakes up and says,
that's Groundhog Day with Bill Murray.
That's an older, that's old, but I have seen it. But that's what my dad always says. It's not Groundhog Day in sales. But every day is different. And it's funny you said that too, because I was on a Zoom call, and I also don't like being called a salesperson because I don't like being sold to. Mm-hmm. I was just in the Bahamas, and I was in the Nassau part where you go through the flea market, and just people are just like trying to get you to buy all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
I was like, these people are the most persistent sales. These guys could make. They could sell anything. They would not leave you alone. It was pretty funny, but I was like, in the last Zoom call, I said to him, I said, this is the most salesy thing I'm going to say. I'm going to have to say this, and I'm going to sound like a sales rep, but this is it. But I also don't like the consultant. And when you have that mindset, even personally, I think it helps change how you interact.
Well,
I'm not a salesperson. I want to tell me why you're having a problem.
Right.
And let's consult with each other and find the solution. Now, whether that means you have to spend money on a product, maybe, or maybe it's we can fix something internally. I mean, I feel like that's where you actually add the value.
I agree. And when it comes to being of value to your customer, you have to be able to, as a consultant, you have to be able to be so honest where, like, for instance, I just had a location that they haven't been really busy. The hours aren't really up, and they were contemplating. They weren't sure what to do. They didn't think they needed this many lifts. So we did a study. We found out, and I said, hey, listen, you know what? I think you'll be fine. Let's eliminate a couple of these. Yeah. Let's lower your monthly operating costs. And that's where being the consultant and having that relationship with the customer as a professional really helps out, because now they're like, well, wait a minute, he's not a salesman, because the salesman would have said, oh, keep him in there.
Yeah, actually, you need more.
You get more. That's right. Hey, you might get busy or something like that. But no, I think at the end of the day, it allows you the more, and this is all based on working more with your customers.
Yeah,
because it's that relationship with
exactly.
them,
When you were coming up, did you have mentors?
I did have a couple of mentors, and it's funny because it all started back in the day when I was self-employed for myself. I had a company, and I learned from my dad. The one thing he said is, you'll never, as a business owner, and this was when I was a business owner, he said, you'll never find anybody. Wait, if you find somebody that works as hard as you do, keep them.
Yeah.
And, I've always taken that as being the person that want to work hard. And the mentors that I've had in this industry have given me little insider tips that you don't think about. It's the little things.
Yeah.
It's the little things that set you apart from other consultants, other reps, other people. And that to me is priceless, because you have to stand out in this day and age.
Yes.
If you do not, there's too many people, and not for nothing, there's too many companies that require, not too many, there are companies that require material handling equipment everywhere you look.
Yes.
And if somebody is listening to this podcast right now and they're just learning about material handling, think about every building you drive by.
Yeah.
If it's got a dock and a door, it's got a forklift more than likely, or a pallet jack or something.
Yes.
And that's everywhere that you look.
Yeah.
So by learning from my mentors and my dad about being different and working hard and thinking outside the box, that makes you an asset.
Exactly.
So
I think almost like you just said, in this world, I think it's almost, like I said, I'll call you about problem. I'm like, hey man, I'm in a pickle. What do I do? How do I handle this situation? Because I got blah, 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 blah. And you always answer, you always give me but I think that if you don't have someone who can call like that, it's going to be harder for you to become successful, because there's so many scenarios and situations at this industry, because it's so broad.
Right.
You're going to get stuck in a situation. I think you even told me, you're like, well, there's still things that happen to me today I still have to learn.
Oh, absolutely. I did, for instance, last week I called one of my close friends who's a mentor of mine, and said, hey, I need some advice.
Yeah, what do I? Yeah.
I got 3 things that I want to do, but I need to maybe get a level head at this one and find out which one might be the best option.
Yeah.
And if you think you know everything about this business, you're not going to be in it very long.
Yeah, because you don't. I can guarantee you that, because it's like bad, or it's just crazy. You could read something and educate yourself like every night on a different aspect of our world, which is something else that I think that you and a couple other guys I call on, they're like, the more you know, and if you don't know, don't act like you know, because people know.
Oh, absolutely.
They can smell BS
100%.
from a mile away.
Yep.
And that's one thing that I have no shame. If I get asked a question, I'm like, you know what? I have no idea.
Yep.
But I know someone who will.
That's exactly
how
I
you right back.
I've always pronounced it. I said, if you got it, if I can't find it, I'll let you know I can't find it. But I'll guide you in the direction of where you might be able to find
exactly.
it. Or get the answer.
And that's my thing. It's like, I don't know, but I know people who do know. So let me go call those people, and I'll call you right back.
Yeah.
So
very important.
Yeah. Well, this has been good, man. I don't think there's really anything else. We kind of nailed all these questions. I don't know if there's anything else that you
I would say
would like to add.
As a consultant to other people out there, or even other companies, really just look and make sure that you're meeting each location's needs. Mm-hmm. That's the key.
Yeah.
And I actually just ran into a situation, now that you say that, where a company who I was bidding, it seemed like they're going to try to standardize their fleet, and unfortunately, I think they're in for one heck of a wild ride.
Yeah.
And I don't think
it looks good on paper.
It looks great on paper, and again, maybe they're being taught something that they shouldn't be taught. But I would say to consultants and to companies, just make sure your local needs are being met. You can still do it through centralized purchasing.
Yeah.
But you have to, you gotta just work outside the box a little bit when you do it.
Sometimes it might benefit you to take the time and really, I guess, what's the word? Break down what you're currently doing. Maybe a company that's doing something. Maybe it's like, hey, maybe we should just look into this and talk to our guy and see if, and if your guy is not doing it, you can call one of us.
Well, and that's it. And as a consultant, you can do the same thing. If you see something, if you got a relationship with a customer that it's not working for them and it's costing them money, you bring that to their attention. Yeah. That's going to make them think twice about especially when you talk about losing money.
Exactly.
And that's where I think thinking outside the box is the way to go. You got to be able to have that conversation with your customer. But centralized purchasing is a good thing. It does have its place. So does localized.
Yeah,
it's
what we learned.
I think if the pros and cons are going to vary.
Yeah.
So I think either one could work. Again, you just have to make sure that all the needs are being met locally.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Jason, I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely.
This was fun.
Good coming in. Thank you.
It was fun, educational. If you are a company and you want to talk about centralized purchasing, call Jason. He'll help you out.
And I may have gotten that Groundhog Day actor screwed up. I believe it was. I don't remember who it was. I think it was one of the Murrays that did it.
What's the? That's an old movie.
Yeah, he woke up every morning. The same thing was the same. I think it was Bill Murray, but we'll have to do a fact check on that one and get back to you on the next episode.
Yeah, we'll let you know if we were right or wrong. Tom Hanks is not it.
No.
He's the one that he became a young kid again.
Yeah, that was big.
Okay, I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll fact check that one. We'll get back to you on that one.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.